The original copper color. Most people today picture a pale, mint green monument standing in New York Harbor, but it actually arrived in America looking like a shiny new penny. The statue is wrapped in a thin skin of pure copper, only about as thick as two stacked pennies, which oxidizes rapidly when exposed to salt water, wind, and air pollution. Within just a few years of its dedication in 1886, the bright metallic brown began to turn a dull, dark brown, and by world year 1906, the entire surface had completely transformed into the green patina we see today. The United States government was actually so alarmed by this change that Congress initially allocated massive amounts of funding to paint over the entire statue, but public outcry and engineering studies eventually convinced them that the green layer actually protected the underlying metal from eroding away. The Bedloes Island Military Fort. The massive star-shaped stone base that the statue proudly stands on was not originally built to be a monument pedestal at all. It was actually Fort Wood, an active heavy artillery army fortification built in the early 19th century to protect New York City from naval invasions by the British. When the French decided to gift the statue to America, the island was still a functioning military ghost, which forced the designers to creatively repurpose the 11-pointed star fort into the foundation for the new monument. This military history caused significant tension, as soldiers were still stationed on the island alongside the statue for decades, and the Army did not fully relinquish control of the land to the National Park Service until well into the 20th century. The broken shackles and chains. While the torch and the tablet are the most famously recognized symbols of the monument, a powerful and much darker piece of imagery lies hidden completely out of sight at her feet. Resting on the pedestal, mostly obscured by the folds of her massive copper robes, are a heavy set of broken iron shackles and a shattered chain. The sculptor, Frederick Auguste Bartholdi, originally intended for these chains to be a direct celebration of the abolition of slavery in the United States following the end of the Civil War, which had concluded just a couple of decades prior. However, prominent American politicians and financiers felt that showcasing the brutal reality of slavery so prominently on a monument of national unity would be far too divisive and provocative, so the chains were minimized, moved to the very bottom, and positioned in a way that makes them almost impossible to see from the ground or from passing boats. The fractured French financing. The entire project was plagued by severe financial instability from its inception, driven by deep political divides within France itself. The statue was not a gift from the French government, as is commonly believed, but rather a private initiative led by a group of French abolitionists and politicians who wanted to subtly protest their own country's oppressive monarchy by praising America's democratic ideals. Because of this political undertone, the ruling French regime actively disliked the project, forcing the creators to rely entirely on public lottery tickets, theatrical galas, and small donations from ordinary citizens to raise the necessary funds. The financial strain was so intense that construction stopped completely multiple times, and parts of the statue, like the giant copper hand holding the torch, had to be shipped across the Atlantic early to be displayed at World fairs as a paid attraction, just to raise enough pocket cash to finish building the rest of the body. The abandoned American pedestal. When the colossal copper pieces finally arrived in New York Harbor inside hundreds of wooden crates, they sat rotting on the dock for months because the American public flatly refused to pay for the stone pedestal. The agreement specified that France would build the statue if America built the base, but the U.S. Congress repeatedly voted down bills to fund the construction, and New York City wealthy elites viewed the monument as an unnecessary New York luxury rather than a national treasure. The project was only saved from total failure when newspaper publisher Joseph Pulitzer launched a massive media campaign, promising to print the name of every single person who donated even a single penny in his newspaper. This brilliant marketing trick triggered a flood of micro-donations from school children, immigrants, and working-class citizens, eventually raising the remaining funds through sheer public willpower, while the wealthy looked on with indifference. The deadly construction hazards. Building a massive metal colossus in the late 19th century was an incredibly dangerous undertaking that relied on raw, unprotected human labor. Workers in the Paris workshops had to endure deafening noise and toxic fumes for years as they hand-hammered the massive copper sheets into shape over intricate wooden molds. Once the pieces arrived in New York, laborers had to scale primitive, rickety wooden scaffoldings hundreds of feet in the air without safety harnesses, ropes, or nets to rivet the heavy metal plates to the iron skeleton. Despite the extreme heights, high harbor winds, and freezing winter temperatures, the workers pushed forward under intense pressure to meet deadlines, resulting in numerous undocumented injuries and near-fatal falls that were largely swept under the rug by the press to maintain the monument's spotless public image. The disastrous lighthouse experiment. President Grover Cleveland originally designated the monument to be managed by the United States Lighthouse Board, intending for the torch to serve a practical purpose as a navigational beacon for ships entering the harbor. Engineers spent months installing an experimental electrical plant on the island and cutting windows into the copper flame so that powerful electric lights could shine out across the water. The experiment, however, was a complete and utter failure, as the light produced was far too dim to guide ships effectively through the thick New York fog. But it was just bright enough to completely blind and disorient thousands of migrating birds. Every single autumn, waves of birds would fly directly into the burning hot glass and heavy copper structure, causing hundreds of dead birds to rain down onto the island every single morning, until the lighthouse operation was permanently shut down in disgust. The severe structural failure. The internal engineering of the monument suffered from a major structural defect that quietly threatened to collapse the entire statue from the inside out for nearly a century. Alexandre Gustave Eiffel, the brilliant engineer who designed the inner skeleton before building his famous tower in Paris, used an ingenious system of iron bars to support the outer copper skin. However, he failed to account for a basic chemical phenomenon called galvanic corrosion, which occurs when copper and iron touch each other in the presence of wet, salty air. This oversight caused the iron framework to rust away into a crumbling powder, expanding in size and literally ripping the copper rivets out of the statue's skin. By the mid-1980s, the internal damage was so catastrophic that the monument had to be completely closed to the public for years, while teams of engineers painstakingly replaced the entire corroded iron skeleton with high-grade stainless steel. The asymmetrical arm defect. During the hurried final assembly of the statue on Bedloes Island, an incredibly careless construction mistake was made that went completely unnoticed for nearly 100 years. The heavy iron framework supporting the right arm, which holds the massive torch high in the air, was accidentally bolted into place about 2 feet out of alignment from Bartholdi's original artistic blueprints. This slight asymmetry shifted the weight distribution of the entire upper body, placing immense unintended structural stress on the delicate shoulder joint every time strong Atlantic winds swept through the harbor. Over the decades, the iron bars inside the shoulder began to warp and bend under the strain, forcing modern restoration teams to install heavy, ugly structural reinforcement beams inside the gown, just to prevent the iconic torch arm from snapping off entirely and crashing into the pedestal below. The Black Tom explosion. During the height of World War I, the monument became an unwitting target in one of the largest acts of foreign sabotage ever committed on American soil. German secret agents infiltrated the nearby Black Tom Railroad Yard in Jersey City, where millions of pounds of military ammunition and explosives were being stored before being shipped to Allied forces in Europe. The resulting midnight explosion was so massive that it registered as a major earthquake, shattering windows across Manhattan, sending shrapnel tearing through the statue's copper robes and popping the rivets out of the arm. The shockwave caused severe structural damage to the delicate internal ladder leading up to the torch, forcing the government to close the torch to the public forever out of fear that the entire arm was no longer safe to support human weight.
The suicide and death records. While the monument is universally celebrated as a beacon of hope and new beginnings, its towering height has unfortunately attracted a dark history of human tragedy and despair. Over the last century, numerous individuals have successfully evaded park security to leap from the high observation decks or the top of the pedestal, plunging to their deaths on the stone fort below. Others have suffered fatal heart attacks or heat stroke while attempting to climb the claustrophobic, suffocatingly hot spiral staircase inside the hollow copper body during the peak of humid New York summers. These tragic incidents forced the National Park Service to install heavy steel mesh cages around all open walkways, post permanent security guards at the crown, and strictly limit the number of visitors allowed to make the grueling physical climb to the top each day.
The suicide pact plots. Beyond individual tragedies, the iconic status of the monument has made it a prime target for extremist political groups seeking to make a dramatic global statement. In the mid-20th century, the FBI successfully uncovered a highly organized plot by a radical group that planned to smuggle dynamite onto the island and detonate it inside the base, aiming to completely topple the statue into the harbor as a protest against the government. This terrifying discovery completely transformed the way the island operates, shifting it from an open public park into a highly secured zone. Today, every single visitor must pass through airport-style security screenings, undergo full body scans, and have their bags X-rayed before they are even allowed to step onto the ferry boats, making it one of the most heavily guarded pieces of real estate in the country.